So I was just coming to the Divide to film a scenic shot when I found out there's a pre-war book right next to Ulysses. Kind of random, but just thought I would go ahead and mention it because I didn't know that was there. Anyways, guys, welcome to all of the locations in the Lonesome Road DLC. Now, this is just a compilation of my Unexplored series, focused entirely on Lonesome Road and the Divide. So this is one of my favorite DLCs in any video game, and this is a compilation of all the videos I made about it. Now, a quick note. In my video that I made about the Long 15, the intro music caused me to be demonetized, but I'm pretty proud of the intro, so I kept it up. It's still on YouTube, but I cut the intro from this video, so if you want to see the original, I'll link it down in the description, but not so important. Anyways, this is a compilation of my series, the Unexplored Mojave, and basically this is meant for people who just want to listen to something while playing Fallout 4, or settlement building, Minecraft, or working, doing homework, driving, whatever it might be. Many of you requested this, such as Hambon the Great 9547. So I hope you enjoy, and without further ado, every location in Lonesome Road. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at Hopeville, which is the first town that you encounter in the Lonesome Road DLC. Now I'm very excited for this video, because Lonesome Road is my favorite DLC in Fallout New Vegas. I really love Ulysses as a villain, and I just love the aesthetic and the weapons and armor that Lonesome Road added to New Vegas. Also, the atmosphere during Lonesome Road is probably my favorite in any Fallout game, so really top notch. Now, throughout the Unexplored Mojave series, I've tried to find out the real locations of locations that we can find in the Mojave. However, Lonesome Road was a little bit more difficult because it's not necessarily based on any real locations. Many players speculate that it's just kind of west of Good Springs, but upon some further research, I started to doubt that theory, and I found a Reddit post from about 10 years ago that I think explains the situation the best. So according to the game, the Marked Men, which is the main villain that we have to fight in Lonesome Road, cut off supplies along State Route 88 and State Route 127. Now 127 is close to New Vegas, which would support the idea that it's near Good Springs. However, State Route 88 is near California, specifically close to Sacramento, making it pretty far away from New Vegas. So if we meet in the middle, that would place the Divide at about Death Valley National Park, which I think just adds a really cool element to this DLC. So for this video, that's the theory I'm going to run with, that the Divide takes place within Death Valley, and I think that would be a pretty cool idea. So as you enter Hopeville, you're going to come across this gas station, and this gas station is actually pretty incredible. In fact, this is one of the best locations in all of Fallout. And I know what you might be saying. Otter, this is just a plain gas station. There's a hard lock safe in it, but there's nothing to see here. Well, you would be wrong. You see, this is every Fallout player's wet dream. Over 100 episodes. Hundreds of hours of exploring the waste, pain, suffering, countless rads, hundreds of chems, alcoholism, and it has all led me to this very moment in time. Here we can find the rarest item in all of Fallout New Vegas, the legendary, the magnificent, the glorious, the radioactive Nuka-Cola Quantum. Everything in Fallout has led me to this very moment, finding the only bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum in Fallout New Vegas. For whatever reason, the devs of Fallout New Vegas didn't put Nuka-Cola Quantum in the game, but we can find it in this chest. There's a 10% chance that it'll spawn in that crate. If it doesn't spawn for you, you will want to reload your save from exiting the bunker, so you'll have to go through the Ulysses conversation every single time, and you will just have to keep reloading if you want to acquire it. Moving on to the Hopeville bunkers, only one of which is accessible. We have to get through a very hard locked door or a hard locked terminal. I decided to go ahead and hack the terminal since I don't usually do that, and I actually quite enjoy hacking in Fallout. Now in here we can find all sorts of amazing loot, so definitely make a stop by here if you get the chance. Now, of course, we can find things like bobby pins and ammunition, which is obviously very good, But we can also find riot gear and riot gear helmet. And the reason I like this armor a lot is it looks like the Ranger armor. However, it does not have the NCR affiliation. So when you wear it, you're still your character and people don't think you're NCR, which is really cool. Also, in a very hard locked locker, we have a riot gear and a riot shotgun that are almost in perfect condition, but it's in a very hard locked locker. So you're going to need a 100 lockpick in order to access it. And then moving up the side here to the west, we can find the Hopeville Missile Base headquarters. We can see this overturned truck along with some more marked men. And these marked men can actually be pretty well armed. This guy had a rocket launcher, and sometimes they can even carry an anti-material rifle. So I found this DLC to be very challenging, which is kind of how I remembered it. But it's not as frustrating, I think, as the Dead Money DLC, which we did a previous video on. And on the top of the headquarters, we can find some ammunition boxes, some stealth boys, and then over here on this edge, we can find some whiskey bottles. So I would like to imagine that maybe workers came up here to drink long ago, before obviously the Great War happened. Now, one thing I really like about this DLC is in even like metal boxes and stuff, you can find pretty decent loot. As you can see in there, I found a stim pack. So I found that looting everything in the Lonesome Road DLC is worthwhile. In Dead Money, it's more out of necessity, but in this DLC, it's more out of that you could find something good or something helpful in almost any box. So you want to look through everything, and I really like that aspect of Lonesome Road. Heading into the headquarter building, we will find some more marked men, one of which is armed with an anti-material rifle, this one here. So definitely, if you're doing this DLC, make sure you come prepared, because these guys can mess you up if they want. I had some trouble killing this guy, but eventually we blew his leg off. And as you can see here, there's that anti-material rifle. Now, inside of the headquarters, there's not a whole lot, but we can find some chems and some healing items. And, of course, the marked men might have good weapons and ammunition on them, but not a whole lot in here. But you can kind of see that people have been mutilated inside of here. Now, there is this medical bot that can help heal your limbs and restore your health, the auto dock, which is really helpful. And there's also a commissary inside to buy ammunition and mods for your weapons that you acquire during your playthrough, so pretty helpful. And there's a destroyed iBot, which will have an upgrade for Eddie. And then in this back room, we can find a locked safe, along with some chems and some pre-war money. Now, during this DLC, you can find a lot of pre-war money, which is really nice, because it is worth a lot of money. As you can see there, pre-war money, along with some stim packs and a copy of Today's Physician. So, not bad. Now, in this other room, before you get to the safe room, I found this really cool light bulb. Somebody kind of jerry-rigged this light bulb, and I just thought it was a really cool aesthetic for Fallout. So while we have this scenic shot of Eddie and a light bulb, let's go over some of the lore of Hopeville. So during the pre-war, Hopeville was a small town that ended up housing nuclear missiles because the United States thought it would be a good place for a base. However, the Commonwealth Defense Administration did not realize that the ground was unstable. It was geographically unstable and there were minor earthquakes. And at some point before the Great War, the U.S. Army allowed Big MT to conduct research on the city, specifically involving weather control. And leading up to the events of Fallout New Vegas, Hopeville was actually a thriving community that served as a trade post between the New California Republic and New Vegas. But that all changed when a certain courier delivered a package to the Divide. Moving on to the actual town of Hopeville, away from the military base, we can find like a main street area with several buildings and houses. However, all of this lies in ruins and kind of just pure chaos because of the massive earthquakes that occurred when the nuclear bombs were detonated underneath the city. And we'll talk more about why later in the video. At this marked man camp, we can find some really kind of like disgusting scenes of what appears to be human organs kind of sprung out around the area. Obviously, the marked men are up to some pretty bad stuff, and obviously they are a bit crazy, and that's putting it lightly. In this building over here, we can actually find the detonator to detonate some of the warheads that will help us clear a path throughout much of the divide. Inside this building, though, we can find some dead marked men that I killed, another one with an anti-material rifle, along with red glare, which is a rocket launcher that is very useful, and as I mentioned, the laser detonator, which we can use to detonate some warheads that will help us clear the way. As always, it'll be worth your time to loot through stuff, as you can find weapons, grenades, ammunition, and of course, chems and medical supplies. Again, really cool about this DLC. Now, after you pick up the laser detonator, you will get ambushed by a lot of marked men, so you'll be ready for that fight. I actually found it pretty difficult, and I really enjoy the difficulty, though, with this DLC. Like I said before, it's not very much frustrating. It feels like a fair fight, unlike Dead Money, which at times feels kind of unfair. In the ground floor of this building, we can find a lot of ammunition, and then there's an Eddie poster over on this building. Of course, if you find all 20 Eddie posters, you'll get some XP. Then we can blow up this warhead, which will lead us to the next section of Hopeville. However, before we move on to the next section, I actually skipped over a part, so we want to head back to that area, which is very easily missed. So this is the Hopeville Missile Base loading station, and we can find some trucks here, and I assume they just use this area to load off supplies and potentially nuclear missiles. This is just to the east of the Nuka-Cola Quantum gas station. And again, we can find a lot of good supplies and food. There's lots of MREs that we can find, which would be a probably decent food, especially if you're playing on hardcore difficulty. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot over here, but there are some plasma mines that are active, so be careful about that. And we can find a skeleton with a Bowie knife next to it, so I wonder if somebody died trying to fight off marked men or something like that. Not sure, but some pretty cool, world building. And then heading towards the next section, we can find the Hopeville Men's Barracks, which of course would have been an army barracks for the men soldiers. And there will be several marked men inside, so you're going to want to make sure to kill them. And this fight can be a little bit difficult, but, me and Eddie handled it pretty alright. Again, we can take some ammo and bottle caps from the guys, and then we can loot the rest of this building and get some ammunition. And there's also some weapons, like the Blade of the West, which I thought was kind of a cool weapon that the marked men sometimes carry on them. And then over here, opposite of me, we have a hard-locked locker, and inside we can actually get some US Army combat armor, which is pretty decent, and it's worth a lot of caps, so a really good find. Again, if you go through this DLC, I highly recommend having 100 lockpick. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on some pretty good loot. And then heading to the Marked Men Guard Outpost, this is the next area of Hopeville. We can find an overturned truck, and of course, more marked men. Now, there's not much in the overturned truck, but we can find some more army supply crates. Now, over in these buildings, this is pretty optional stuff, like you could easily skip it, but we can find some pretty dark stuff in here. So, of course, as always, more ammunition, more chems and medical supplies, all of that kind of good stuff. And there is an average locked metal box, but for me, it didn't have much loot that was worth a lot. And upstairs, we can just find more ammunition and some more military supply crates. Again, lots of looting to do in this DLC, so make sure you have a lot of time when you play through it, try to relax, and take your time. Now, actually, if we go around back, we can find a basement, like 2 cellar doors, and down here we have some pretty dark stuff going on. You're going to notice that these tables are filled with human skeletons and what appears to be human organs, so some really messed up stuff going on down here. Now, for whatever reason, when we came down here, Eddie entered combat mode, but there was no enemies down here, so I'm not sure why he went berserk or why he was hostile. And there's also a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor over amongst the organs. And then over by the Eddie poster, we can find 2 skeletons hanging from the feet, and it appears that their body parts were collected in wooden crates. Now, I went over to check the refrigerators to see what was inside of them, but there was just normal food, which I wonder if there should be like other stuff inside of them though, because of the messed up things happening in that basement. Now eventually you'll come across this marked men supply outpost, but there's really not a whole lot over here. As you can see, there's a warhead, but upon detonating the warhead, I couldn't really find any loot that was worthwhile. Like, detonating the nuclear warhead didn't really have any amazing benefits, besides, of course, getting you the challenge of detonating all of the warheads within the divide. Inside this truck, like I said, not a whole lot, but there's some bobby pins, and bobby pins are really useful in this DLC for lockpicking if you didn't bring a lot with you. But definitely before doing this DLC, I'd highly recommend stocking up on lockpicks. Now in the back of this trailer, I just found another kind of creepy scene. We have a mattress, some blood splatter, a tipped over chair, and a mop box or mop crate, which, you know, may have been used for some kind of blood. Kind of disturbing, kind of fits with the theme of the divide. And eventually you'll have to detonate this warhead that's in the middle of the road in order to progress the quest further. Now, the fight that ensues is pretty challenging, but using a red glare and an anti-material rifle, and me and Eddie were able to clear it somewhat easily. However, Blister here had a lot of HP, and it took a lot of rockets to bring him down. Again, I found this DLC to be really fun and really challenging, which is part of the reason why it's my favorite DLC, combined with the lore and story. Now, eventually you'll find this fire truck, which I thought was pretty cool. I don't know of any other fire trucks within Fallout New Vegas. And we can climb up on top of it in order to find some other parts of this building. You can find these like stone huts made out of like bricks or something, littered around this DLC, which kind of shows the primitive nature of the marked men. And of course, we can find some more ammunition. Then we can detonate this nuclear warhead and it'll take us to the next area of the divide. And that final explosion is pretty cool. Now this will lead us to the Collapsed Overpass Tunnel, which we will cover in a future video. But for now, continuing about some of the Hopeville lore. So as I mentioned, Hopeville had a lot of nuclear missiles underneath it, and it was important for the NCR in New Vegas. Now the Courier, the main character, was one of the essential people helping keep Hopeville running. He ran a lot of missions for the NCR. Eventually, the NCR hired the Courier to deliver a package, Eddie, to Hopeville. Unbeknownst to the NCR and to the Courier, Eddie had the activation codes for the nuclear missiles in the divide, and when the Courier showed up, the nuclear missiles detonated, and it caused massive earthquakes and created the chaos that we see now. And from what we can gather, the Courier repressed these memories because of how traumatizing they were, and Ulysses is the sole survivor of the detonation. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. What do you guys think of Lonesome Road? Let me know in the comments, and if you have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be checking out the Collapsed Overpass Tunnel Entrance. Now this is the area immediately after the player clears Hopeville, and this area is pretty short, but it introduces a new enemy within Fallout called the Tunnelers. And there's some other various interesting stuff in here. Now, this tunnel collapsed when the nuclear weapons detonated underneath Hopeville. And as we mentioned in the last video, those weapons detonated because the Courier delivered a package, Eddie, to Hopeville that contained the activation codes and detonated all the nukes unknowingly. So upon entering the tunnel, you will have a conversation with Eddie, and if you are quick, you will actually encounter a Deathclaw that only has 35 HP. And the point of this Deathclaw is actually to be killed by tunnelers, but if the player is fast enough, they can just shoot the Deathclaw and it'll die very quick. But besides that, in this overturned truck, we have some food, but not much loot inside of it. And then over here on this mound, we can find a crate with a lot of rockets in it, which is pretty good because we can use those rockets to fight various enemies. And over here we can find an H&H tools gun, which is a fairly decent weapon that we can use. And then on the dead NCR soldier, we can find the Bravo team orders, which read, at 0600 hours, Bravo team will conduct sweep and clear operations in advance of the main force. Early intelligence suggests the tunnels are only sparsely populated by small, subterranean semi-humanoids, which are easily cowed by bright light and loud noises. Bravo team has been issued flashbang grenade for this purpose and is expected to meet minimal resistance. Now, inside this container next to the NCR soldier, we can find a duffel bag being covered by a skeleton, which has some healing supplies and grenades, which are pretty useful. Now, I did want to mention the NCR soldiers that we can find here are the only NCR soldiers within the Lonesome Road DLC that are not marked men. And up here we can find some rangers, and we can take their dog tags and armor. And as we advance further into the tunnel, we will encounter tunnelers. And this enemy is a brand new enemy within Fallout New Vegas. I mean, as far as it was introduced in Lonesome Road. And this enemy might make an appearance in later Fallout installments based on what Ulysses tells us. And we will look some more at Ulysses' dialogue later on. In the back of this truck, we can find a lot of ammunition and some stealth boys, which is really useful, especially in this DLC. And as I said, I wanted to take a look at some of the dialogue that Ulysses has about tunnelers.
Death will come from below. In the divide, need to watch the sky and the ground. Mojave will be easy prey for them. They'll start emerging throughout the Mojave in time. Might be years, probably less. They breed fast, hunt in groups, more than enough to bring down the strongest in the Mojave, once they draw blood. Seen them tear apart Deathclaws. Deathclaw might get some, but the rest will swarm it, tear it apart, like Denver hounds.
And here we can see that Ulysses believes tunnelers will pose a significant threat to the Mojave, and we could possibly see tunnelers in the Fallout TV show as we shift towards the Mojave. Keep in mind, New Vegas takes place in 2281, and the Fallout TV show takes place in 2296. More than enough time for the tunnelers to make their mark on the Mojave. And these guys can be pretty annoying to fight. However, I still don't think they're as bad as a Deathclaw, despite what Ulysses tells us. But they are a pretty cool enemy within Fallout, and I hope they make an appearance again. Their bioluminescent nature and the fact that they live underground and they can pop up anywhere at any time makes them a great enemy for the Fallout universe. Kind of reminds me of Tremors, if you've ever seen that horror movie. Moving on, though, we can find a lot of food and MREs, as is the case with the rest of the Lonesome Road. As you can see in this overturned truck, we have even more MREs. And then as we approach the exit in this back corner, we can find some more supply crates that have healing items in it, which is greatly appreciated as we continue along Lonesome Road, which has a fair share of difficulties. And then as we approach this truck, we can find the exit to the high road, which will be a future video. Now, I did want to quickly point out, over here we can find a teddy bear, and underneath this teddy bear is a copy of Duck and Cover, which is of course very good as it can increase your explosive skill permanently by 3 or by 4 if you have the right perks. Also, I just thought this teddy bear is kind of creepy. Why is it in this tunnel, just over in this random box? So, what do you guys think? Do you think we will see tunnelers within the Fallout TV show? Of course, tunnelers only appear in Lonesome Road, so it makes them a little bit less known. However, I really hope they do make an appearance, as it would show great attention to detail by the show's creators, and it might also help explain the terrible state that we see New Vegas in during the TV show. So, what do you guys think? And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at the High Road, which is the area directly after the Collapsed Overpass. Now, in the pre-war era, the high road was a critical piece of infrastructure for people traveling through what has become known as the Divide. It connects Hopeville and Ashton. And with the destruction in the Divide, the high road remains one of the few passable routes between Hopeville and Ashton. So obviously it's become very important, but it is very dangerous because of that fact. So immediately upon entering the high road, you will be confronted by Ulysses speaking over Eddie. Then we have a billboard about our hope for our country, which is probably a military advertisement. Now, right at the beginning, we can find some lootable bags and stuff. However, there wasn't a whole lot inside of them. Then up here, we have some marked men, along with a flag of the United States. And these marked men are actually led by a named NPC called Beast, and Beast has a unique helmet on him, the marked Beast face helmet. Then over here we have a commissary, which Eddie can unlock for us, good for buying ammunition or selling some of your stuff. And also there's various mods that we can purchase from it, so pretty good. But these are littered across the Lonesome Road. Then we have some warheads we have to detonate to continue our journey. And then I found this nice little truck just sitting on the side of the road, and there was some money inside of it. And then in front of us is the crow's nest in this collapsed building, and to the right of the crow's nest, apparently you can actually see Ulysses watching you from the building that is right of the crow's nest. So kind of interesting, however, I didn't find him at the time I filmed this. Also, I've said this before, but I've always thought these trucks are just really cool. They have a really nice aesthetic, mixing kind of like Western America with the nuclear age. So pretty cool. Over here we have a bus that has been, well, it's been through some rough times, and this suitcase has some pre-war money. So pretty good find because it's worth a lot of caps and it has 0 weight. Then we have some ammunition boxes, and we can take the ammunition, of course. Now, throughout Lonesome Road, you're going to find tons of ammunition and tons of medical supplies because this DLC is pretty challenging. Then up here, we have the Crow's Nest. This is an area that was used by an NCR soldier who got trapped up here and ultimately died. Also, we can find one of Ulysses' logs up here, which will give us some information on Ulysses and his views on different parts of the Mojave. And there's also a locked medical box up here with some decent medical supplies. Down here, there's a trailer, and you have to be really careful in this trailer because upon entering it, it will start an ambush event where you are attacked by a death claw. And I was not ready for this. And I was caught off a little bit off guard. And as you can see here, there's the Deathclaw, and he would end up killing me the first time. I actually found this event with these Deathclaws to be pretty challenging, even more so than maybe Deadwind Cavern, because always before when I fought Deathclaws, I could choose my distance of the encounter, right? But here, it's an ambush. You cannot select how far away you are. So as you can see here, I was trying to run away from him, and then I paused because I was panicking, and I used a stim pack, and I was able to kill the Deathclaw. But this is a really cool moment within the DLC for me, but obviously a very difficult moment as well. And as is common in Lonesome Road, we have to continue detonating these nuclear warheads, and there are even more Deathclaws. Now, I could not find any information on this, however, so this is my speculation, but I imagine the ground below us is inhabited by tunnelers, and apparently tunnelers can hunt and kill Deathclaws, so I would suspect the Deathclaws were forced up here to the high road by the tunnelers, because the area below us has become uninhabitable for Deathclaws, which is pretty scary that there is a monster within the Mojave Wasteland that scares Deathclaws even. And in the back of this truck, we have a bed along with some ammunition boxes, so pretty good find and a good place to rest up after fighting so many damn Deathclaws. Also, we have a survivor's footlocker, which has a lot of ammunition and some weapons and armor in it, so again, a pretty good find. Continuing down the road, we have more Deathclaws, but it got significantly easier because, as I said before, I can choose the distance of the encounter, and I can use my anti-material rifle to kill them. Now this is the end of the high road actually, and we're going to be moving on to the Junction 7 rest stop. But it's still kind of part of the same area, so we will talk about it in this video. Now at the end of the high road we can find a collapsed tunnel, however it is not accessible to the player, and there's a truck kind of sticking out of it, and if we go inside the truck we can find some military crates with some first aid supplies, so pretty good. And then if we come over here we can find a little encampment, and we can find another Ulysses log, along with some supplies and junk, but really not a whole lot here. But I think the Ulysses logs are pretty interesting. Then moving on, we can find a collapsed building along with just a area that's been obviously devastated. And we can find a really cool scene here. So we have a special enemy called Bonesaw. But even more interesting here is we have a dead Deathclaw surrounded by several dead marked men. So obviously there was a pretty fierce battle here between the marked men and the Deathclaw. And Bonesaw and one more marked man who was a sniper were the lone survivors of the encounter. So some really cool world building from Obsidian. And then inside one of these stone huts we can find a Roughin' It bedroll kit. And it weighs a lot at 15 pounds. However, this can be used to sleep anywhere as long as we are outside. So it might be useful, and it is a somewhat rare item within Fallout New Vegas. There's only a handful of them within the Lonesome Road DLC, so definitely something you want to pick up. However, I was reading on Reddit there is a glitch with these where you're unable to use it if you pick up more than one. So if you want to grab it, do not pick up multiple of them, just pick up one, and you should be okay. Then we have this warhead back in this corner, and upon detonating it, we can find a skeleton along with some metal boxes that have some ammunition and weapons and medical supplies in them. Also, I just really like these lead-lined medical boxes. They just look really cool and they match the Fallout aesthetic. Now, I really like the high road, like the atmosphere that it creates with the high winds and the kind of, terrible, rusted, nuclear atmosphere. And it also reminds me a lot of Dr. Bosch, and I think a lot of the assets from this part of the game were actually used in Dr. Bosch's horror video series. Now, at the end of the high road, we have the nuclear missile launch, which is one of my favorite scenes within Fallout New Vegas, so I will go ahead and play that without commentary. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at the Ashton missile silo, along with the Sunset Tower, or at least the inside part of Sunset Tower. Now, this missile silo is of course where the missile is launched by the Courier, a single missile which detonates over Hopeville and creates the Courier's Mile. Of course, we saw that launch and detonation in the previous video. Also worth noting that when the Courier returned to Ashton and Hopeville in 2281, all of the missiles were destroyed within this specific silo, except for the one that is ultimately launched. So this silo is now empty and devoid of any nuclear missiles. So upon entering the silo for the first time, you're going to be encountered with there's tons of explosions, and you're going to be forced to take this elevator further into the silo, and you're going to be ambushed by a lot of tunnelers. So at this part in the game, it really starts to throw a lot of tunnelers at you. However, I actually think they're not that difficult to fight. They can deal a lot of damage, however, they don't have very high health themselves. So me and Eddie were able to clear this part pretty easily. And upon reaching the bottom level, you can find a lot of explosions inside the room which would have housed the actual missile, and just kind of pure destruction from your actions. Of course, you don't have a choice but to launch the missile. Then we have a locked terminal, which will open this locked door. And inside of here, there isn't a whole lot, but we can get some medical supplies, at least one stim pack, some chems, and some junk. And there is also some pre-war money. As I mentioned before in previous videos, pre-war money is pretty good because it's worth a lot of money. And then besides tunnelers, you're going to find a lot of sentry bots within this silo, but they're pretty easy to take out at my level. And there's also an auto dock in here to heal all of your wounds and restore your health. And on the top floor of the silo, we will find the easiest hard lock terminal ever. It was just the first word. And inside of this room, we can find an upgrade for Eddie. So that's pretty good and obviously very valuable, especially if you use Eddie back in the Mojave Wasteland. But I thought this was a pretty interesting place to visit, especially as you get down below. You have the collapsed office building. And this is a place that I kind of forgot about in this DLC. It's kind of a short segment of the game, but I still think it's pretty interesting, and I had fun exploring it. Also in that suitcase, there was some pre-war money. And then inside of Sunset Tower, we will find more tunnelers, and this is also a pretty fast segment of the game. Now, I did want to mention, though, on this first, floor, or I guess second floor, really, you're going to find a hard lock safe behind this bookcase, but the most interesting thing is we can actually find a Chinese training manual, which will increase our sneak skill by 3 or by 4 if you have a perk. However, this manual is not easily accessible, and you wouldn't know it was there if it wasn't for, online guides and stuff. Now, you can access it via console command, or you can get it with a special camera angle, which I'll show you. I also want to highlight some of these advertisements. So we had one for a pony, and then we have one for some kind of space odyssey. And then back over in the corner of this hallway where we killed those tunnelers initially, there's this bookshelf facing the wall. If we crouch and go into third person and look at the bottom left of the shelf, we can access the training manual. So pretty darn good. On the next flight of stairs, we have an advertisement for some kind of Halloween shop, like Spirit or something in the Fallout world. Of course, the nuclear bombs fell near Halloween, on October 23rd, just 1 week before Halloween. Then on the next floor, we have some abandoned office rooms, but there isn't a whole lot of loot in it. But we can find some interesting advertisements. We have a propaganda poster from the US military. And then we also have a poster talking about some sort of moon landing inside of the Museum of Technology. And then we have an advertisement for Super Duper Mart, which is of course in Fallout 3, Fallout 4, and the TV show. And then we have a poster for the American military. And then we move on to the rooftop and the divide, but that will be covered in a separate video. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. If you have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. The Army of Otters here, and today we're going to be checking out the divide. Mainly the northern section of the divide, as in the previous video we checked out Hopeville and Ashton. Now this is probably my favorite area in the entire Fallout series. It is difficult, the enemies are really cool, you have an incredible atmosphere, you have environmental aspects to the game, and it's just a really amazing experience, at least in my opinion. And this is the reason why I think Lonesome Road is the best DLC in Fallout New Vegas. And as I mentioned, this stretch of the game is pretty difficult, and the reason for that is that this is the final stretch of Lonesome Road before you face off against Ulysses. And honestly, that final face-off or confrontation with Ulysses is just incredible, and it really just sends home how amazing this DLC is. So let's get to it and let's check out the Divide. Now, real quick, in case you don't know, or in case you haven't watched previous episodes of the Unexplored Mojave, the Divide was actually created by your character, the Courier. Now, Hopeville and Ashton used to be a very prosperous settlement and was well on its way to becoming its own nation, comparable to that of the NCR. However, one day, the Courier, your character, was delivering a package from the NCR, which happened to be Eddie, and Eddie happened to have the detonation codes for all of the nuclear missiles underneath Hopeville and Ashton, and when the Courier brought the package here, it just caused chaos, causing earthquakes, causing all of the devastation, and killing everyone here except for Ulysses and the Courier. And that's why we have this place like we see it today. So right as you come out of Sunset Tower, there's going to be a lot of nuclear warheads that you can detonate, and it's definitely to your advantage to try and locate some of them and detonate them, because it'll help clear out the area of marked men. Then over here in this corner we have some mole rats, and we'll explore that a little bit later, because there's an interesting goodie hidden there. But from the top you can take out a lot of the enemies. And then as you walk down this platform, you can actually see Ulysses, and he is actually just watching you climb down. However, you cannot interact with him in any way. He's a sort of kind of ghost figure, where there's no interaction for you, unfortunately. But as you make your way down, you can find a audio log from Ulysses, along with an average locked safe. But as you can see here, I'm shooting the building where Ulysses is, but nothing happens. So there is a duffel bag over here with some bottle caps and some healing items, and then we will continue to make our way down. And as we make our way down, we can find some propaganda posters, like here from the US government and Vault Tech, along with some graffiti from Ulysses himself, telling the Courier to run away. Now, I wanted to show this suitcase just because it had a lot of bottle caps in it and some chems, just showing that in this DLC, a lot of the lootable crates and stuff have a lot of good stuff in it, unlike other Fallout games. Now, having the anti-material rifle, especially in this section, was extremely useful. As the marked men try to get me from far away, they greatly struggled. Then we can find this fallen billboard, which I thought did a really good amount of world building, as it shows the silos underneath Ashton and Hopeville as a defense for America. Over here we can find the mole rats that we killed earlier, along with Private Foster's personal journal, which gives us an insight to some of the NCR activity in the area, which reads, "Jesus, this place is a hellhole. I heard it was bad from some of the guys coming back, but Jesus. Henriksen bought it when one of those unexploded warheads went off. And Jenkins. Those things got him. I don't know what they were exactly. Ghouls maybe. But nasty fuckers. LT thinks they were drawn by the explosion that killed Henriksen. I think we're all gonna die here." So obviously that dead body was a former NCR trooper that died here. And then behind all of this, we can find a skeleton along with a duffel bag and a hunting rifle. So probably another victim to the horrors of the Divide. Now, eventually, as we progress further, we have to destroy this nuclear warhead, as you can see me struggling to do here. And once we destroy it, this building above us will collapse, blocking the way forward. And then we have to go around through a tunnel. But kind of some really cool environmental storytelling here in this DLC, something that is not all too common within the Fallout series, which I think is rather unfortunate. If we had more environmental interaction, I think it'd be really cool. Now, eventually you can find this 3rd Street Municipal Building, and this is a location you definitely want to go to. Now, this terminal here is normally locked, but if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, the password will simply be guessed. And the reason this is only with the Wild Wasteland perk is because this is an Easter egg. It's a reference to the FX animated series Archer, which is a satire of espionage and spy thrillers, where the password for multiple high security areas is revealed to be guessed. So here we can see a reference to that show. And then we can also find some medical supplies over in the corner, but not much else on the first level. But if we go over here, we can reach this sewer system, And if we make our way through the sewer system, which has some tunnelers in it, we will come out on the next floor of the building. And on this floor, we can find a lot of good loot. And more specifically, the Elite Riot Gear armor set. This is better than the normal armor gear, riot gear, that you get from earlier in the game. So you definitely want to come over here, find this dead soldier, and then take his armor, because it's quite good and it is quite valuable. So definitely a really good find and something you want to pick up. Now, at the collapsed building, there's an invisible wall which prevents you from getting over it. I tried using the reload dash jump, but I couldn't get on over it. So we have to use the cave. I was just trying to find glitches and exploits, but that didn't work. Then moving on to the Cave of the Abandoned. This cave has a ton of tunnelers in it. However, I find that this battle was actually pretty easy because this place is very large and it's easy to distance yourself from the tunnelers. If we head over to this back corner in the northwest, we can find a suitcase, and then we can find an Easter egg where we can find a dog named Seymour. This only appears with the Wild Wasteland perk, and this is an Easter egg to the TV show Futurama, and more specifically the episode Jurassic Bark, in which Fry finds his dog Seymour fossilized. And then if you saw earlier, we picked up a note in a suitcase called Sunflower Summer's Diary, and this note reads, "Dear Diary, I think we did it. We finally convinced the death merchants to hear our beautiful Mother Earth's cries. I just had a personal meeting with the base commander, who said they would be taking a long, hard look at our demands and preparing something special for us. I can't wait to see what it is. I bet it's a full nuclear disarmament." But if you know anything about Fallout lore, you know this person was a little bit unrealistic. There was no way the base commander was ever going to agree to such a thing. He was actually pretty aggressive and pretty violent. And in the note, she mentions Mother Earth's cries, and I'm pretty sure this is a reference to all of the earthquakes that were happening in the area prior to the Great War. Now, we will have to continue to fight our way out of the Cave of the Abandoned. There will be a lot of tunnelers. Now, this place is really cool. While it's a short section of the game, you're just in a fully caved-in section of the city, and you can see remnants of a hospital. You can actually use the auto dock to heal you. And while you're in there, if you look at the ceiling, you can actually see an upside-down swimming pool. So just really cool aesthetic and attention to detail. As we exit the cave, Eddie will run away from us because he's hacked by Ulysses. So now we are on our own, truly the Lonesome Road. Now as you progress further, you're going to find 2 death claws that are blocking your path. Now, since my armor at this point was actually very degraded, I decided to go ahead and use a Fat Man and some Tiny Tot mini nukes in order to clear the way. Now this was pretty effective. I kind of just launched them towards the general area where the death claws were, and this actually scared them away. And then I moved up and finished them off with some more mini nukes. Now, as you clear the way, you're going to come to a fork in the road at a busted sewage pipe. Now, if you go left, you'll encounter one of the most difficult death claws in the game. And if you go right, that is the main way to go, the main way. There on the right, as you saw, there was an unexploded nuke that we have to detonate in order to get by. Now, going to the difficult death claw, you're going to enter this cave. And as you enter, it's going to collapse behind you, forcing you to fight this death claw at close range. And we can also find an NCR distress signal in here, detailing how this death claw killed an NCR troop. And here it is. The name of the death claw is Roar, and Roar indeed. He just ran at me and hit me once, and I was dead. So using my experience from Dead Wind Cavern, I decided to use a Big Kid mini nuke on the Deathclaw Roar, and it actually worked pretty well. It didn't kill me, and I was able to kill him. Now on him is Roar's Talon, and this can be crafted into a pretty good melee weapon, so definitely something you want to pick up is because it can give you a unique weapon. Inside, we can find some skeletons, and then we can listen to the NCR distress signal.
Mayday! 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 This is NCR Trooper Gleason, calling anyone listening on this channel. my platoon has been wiped out, and I am pinned down by a goddamn huge deathclaw in a place called the Divide. So far, I've been able to scare it away with flares, but I lack any explosives to kill the damn thing. Please assist. I say again, please assist. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday! This is NCR Trooper Gleason, calling anyone listening on this channel.
And we can assume that she was killed by Roar. Now, actually, Roar is afraid of flares, so if you come into this fight and don't have mini nukes, you'll probably want to use flares in order to scare him into a corner or something, and then kill him. After killing him and detonating the warhead, we can come outside and continue along our path, which there we'll see a lot of destruction because of the warhead we detonated it earlier in the video. Now, something to be aware of as you walk around this place is there's going to be a lot of snipers in the second half here. However, most of the snipers have undetonated warheads next to them, so you can easily take them out by using your detonator. Now, if we go up this ramp, we can find that snipers, or just higher up area that the marked men were using earlier, and we killed them with the undetonated warhead. And then there's a terminal up here talking about the earthquakes and how severe they were, obviously before the Great War happened. Then just lots of ammunition, as is the usual within the Divide. And then over here I actually found a marked man that was somehow not dead, and I don't really know how he got here, but I came over and finished the job, so it was okay. Then, moving on, there's this building, and there's really not much in this building, but I went over here, and a scripted event happened where I was ambushed, so I just thought it was pretty cool. And there's also a metal box back here, but not much inside of it, unfortunately. But as you can see here, this marked man, this hunter, had a stealth boy, and then a few more also attacked me, so just kind of a really cool scripted event. And then also one of these guys was called Blade, so a unique NPC in the final stretch of the DLC here. Now, as you make your way towards the end, there's a location on the top of this building, which is a water treatment plant. And in here we can see an interesting encounter where tunnelers and marked men are actually fighting each other. I'm not aware of any other incidents of this happening within Lonesome Road, so a kind of cool sequence of events, and pretty easy to clear out because for the most part they're distracted on each other. Now there's also some pretty decent loot in here. We can actually find a copy of Pugilism Illustrated, which is behind these lockers inside of this back room, but besides that there's not a whole bunch in here besides maybe some medical supplies and chems. Then beneath this makeshift bridge is our last location within the Divide before we move on to Ulysses, the waste disposal station. Now as I came here, I was attacked by some marked men from behind, so I killed them and went inside. Now as you enter, you're going to find this dead skeleton and a bunch of radioactive barrels, and in the middle of all of this you can find a wasteland survival guide, along with a metal box that has a lot of goodies inside of it. And as I mentioned before, but I'll go ahead and mention it again, the Wasteland Survival Guide is indeed the Wasteland Survival Guide from Fallout 3, written by the main character and Maria Brown. Then in the back of this cave, we're going to find an adventurer's pack, and once you loot him, and he has a marksman carbon on him, and take his note, you will be attacked by tunnelers. And if we read the note, we learn that, if you find this, my name is James Rubinek. I'm a trader from the hub. Thought I found a new route to Markets East. Guess I know now why no routes go through this godforsaken place. Legs broken, can't get out, and even if I could, there's those crazed ghouls and those digging things waiting for me. Please, get this note to my ex-wife, Anna. Tell her what happened. Tell her how I died. And I guess you can tell that cheating bitch I hope she's happy with that limp dick Rory Spencer. So it sounds like our friend James has had a rough life. Now as we continue through the tunnel, we will, like I mentioned before, be ambushed by a lot of tunnelers. And I actually found this to be one of the most difficult fights against tunnelers just because it's a small location. And then we will move on to Ulysses' temple. Now, I won't be covering the temple on this show just because it's part of the main story, and it's a very epic conclusion to this quest, and it's also not very long. It's mainly just story and dialogue driven, which is not really stuff I cover on this channel. So in the next episodes, we will take a look at some of the places that are destroyed by the Courier's actions. As always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for future videos, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time.
Begin again in the night. Let's sway again tonight. On my shoulder, your cheek against mine. Where can we go?
The Couriers finally really did it. They blew up the lands west and east of the Mojave, damning them all to hell. The act was discovered 200 years later as other couriers explored the Mojave wastes, and this road has reached its end. Maybe that's why you've come to need to see where the missile from Ashton touched ground down below in Hopeville. Down below in Hopeville. The Courier's Mile.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. Today we're going to be looking at Courier's Mile, one of the darkest places within Fallout New Vegas. Now this location has been requested many times in the past, specifically by San Lorenzo 7896, Human 981, and Andrea Carvello ZD9er. Also, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone who has supported this series. We're now at over 110 episodes, so I really just can't believe how far this has come. So thanks for watching. Now, as you return to Lonesome Road after finishing the quest, and if you choose to spare Ulysses, you can find Ulysses sitting at the very beginning, and he has some interesting words about Courier's Mile.
Maybe that's why you've come to need to see where the missile from Ashton touched ground down below in Hopeville. The Courier's Mile. My name for it. If you have a better one, you grant it. My choice in names won't carry past you and I. Lies along the road, running from the Hopeville silo, straight onto where the ground burns and wind howls even stronger than here. That's part of why I'm here. Watch them. If they attack me, try to enter the Mojave. I answer, not looking to kill them. Save them, if I can. There might be something saving in them. If not, then what I do is mercy, not murder.
So from Ulysses, we learn that the Courier's Mile was named by him. And even if you choose to kill Ulysses, it is still given the name Courier's Mile. Now, the entrance to Courier's Mile is right at the beginning of Hopeville, right where you exit the Hopeville missile silo. Now, normally it is blocked off until after you launch the nuclear missile from the Ashton missile silo, and it detonates over a part of Hopeville, creating this hellhole, which we will now explore. Now, something I wanted to show was in my Hopeville video, I forgot to show the women's barracks because it is blocked by this undetonated warhead, and you need the laser detonator to get in, but you don't get the laser detonator until later in the game. Now, there really isn't a whole lot inside besides your normal loot. However, I did like this chessboard and 2 beds, and I thought maybe somebody got trapped in here or something like that, or maybe 2 people. But if you go in the back, you will spawn a scripted event where you will be ambushed by 2 marked men, and you'll have to fight your way out. And there's also an average locked medical kit that has some good medical supplies in it, but really not a whole bunch of loot in there, but I figured I'd go ahead and mention it since I forgot it. Now, as you approach Courier's Mile, there is a lone marked man sniper who will have a marksman rifle, so be careful. Now, of course, you can take the anti-material rifle off the marked man if you don't already have one, and then there's a dumpster near the entrance, and then we can enter the Courier's Mile. Now, in my opinion, the Courier's Mile aesthetically looks very similar to Fallout 3, kind of that greenish kind of tent that is very present within Fallout 3, so kind of a cool sight to see within Fallout New Vegas. Now, immediately on your right, you will notice some weapon crates and a high-tech gun case, which will have some random weapons in it and some ammunition. Now, this is a really good place to stock up on ammunition and such, but this place is also pretty damn difficult, so make sure to bring a lot of really good weapons with you, along with a lot of Radaway and Rad-X. Also, having Ulysses' mask and radiation equipment is pretty helpful. Now, when I jumped up on this platform, I accidentally alerted the marked men to my presence, and they attacked me, and there was also death claws nearby, so they attacked me, and it was not the way I imagined handling the situation, but somehow, some way, it all ended up working out okay. Now, of course, an encounter with death claws would not be complete without an encounter with Death Claw Jesus, as we can see here. So after killing Deathclaw Jesus, I was forced to retreat by the approaching marked men, and eventually I was behind this car just fighting them off with my anti-material rifle when I got a surprise attack by a Deathclaw. Being panicked, I retreated further, pulled out my alien blaster, and got really lucky that the Deathclaw ran away because I was in an area too small for him to go. So kind of lucky that I didn't die there. And then I used the alien blaster to clear out the remaining enemies. That way I could regain my health and just kind of get a footing of what just happened. A very wild couple of minutes of combat, but really fun, and one of the reasons I really like this place. It's challenging and it's unpredictable, but it doesn't feel unfair, unlike Dead Money. Now, when you visit Courier's Mile, you're definitely going to want to loot everything. You can get some really good loot, some good healing, and a lot of ammunition. Now, some people don't really think it's worth it, but I do just because, one, it's a really fun place to fight and to test your skills, and you can actually get some pretty rare ammo in large quantities. So, in my opinion, it's definitely worth a visit, and it's a good place to test out your skills and see how you can handle so many difficult enemies. And up in this building, which is in the northeast corner of the map, we can just find more aid and more ammunition. And like I said before, this place is difficult. Here I was just minding my own business, and I just got ambushed by 3 Deathclaws. I didn't know where they came from, and I was not ready for it. So definitely be careful when you come here. Now, my second attempt, of course, I was more prepared. I could search out, look for the Deathclaws, and using my explosive rounds and a mini nuke, I was able to get rid of them pretty effectively. And as I mentioned earlier, make sure to bring a lot of Radaway. Of course, this is ground zero for a recent nuclear explosion, and towards the center of the map, you can get up to plus 25 rads a second. So definitely make sure you have some radiation gear or some Rad-X. Now over in this building, we can find a ton of ammo and some more high-tech weapons boxes. And then in this building, there's two interesting things. So first, on the top, we can just find one of those lead-lined supply crates, the metal box, and it has a breathing mask in it and some just radiation stuff. And then over on the wall on the second floor, we can find the imprint of a person. And what this is likely a reference to is what is known as a nuclear shadow, or known as a blast shadow, or also known as a human shadow of death. And this is just a really dark and eerie reminder of the devastation caused by atomic weapons. And we can actually see this in real life in Hiroshima. Near a bank that was at the epicenter of the explosion, we can actually see a black shadow of what remains of a human being. And it's just truly kind of heartbreaking and devastating, and it's a real reality that we have with atomic weapons. Now, in Fallout, they kind of got it wrong. As you can see, in real life, it should be reversed. The person should be black, and the surrounding area should be white. I don't know if that was a mistake or on purpose, or if this is supposed to be more of a humorous Easter egg, but either way, I thought it was kind of a cool idea to put this in a video. And one more thing I wanted to add is in that picture from earlier, that staircase has actually been preserved, and you can still see it to this day at the Hiroshima Peace Museum. So if you ever get to visit Japan, I highly recommend checking it out, because it's just so dark, and it's truly an incredible piece of human history, and it shows the devastation of atomic war. Now, on to a lighter topic. There are 2 undetonated warheads within Courier's Mile, so you definitely want to make sure to blow them up if you're trying to get all 30 of them. But you don't really get anything for detonating them, at least nothing that I could find. They're kind of just there for you to collect, and they do increase radiation in the area upon detonation. And one last thing I wanted to mention is at the beginning we can get the unique weapon Blood Nap, which is a unique Bowie knife within the game. So definitely make sure to pick it up. It's right at the beginning and very easy to get. And one last interesting thing I noticed is while I was walking around looking for a scenic shot, I noticed there was a skeleton kind of like hanging off this bridge here. And I wanted to see if I can knock him down. And you actually can. And here it's kind of funny because it looks like he's holding on for dear life. But eventually, using the explosive rounds of the anti-material rifle, I was able to knock down the skeleton, and you can, of course, interact with it. So I just thought that was kind of funny, kind of interesting, and I didn't see anything else on it. So there it is. And there we have it, the Courier's Mile. One of the darkest and most difficult places within Fallout New Vegas. Now, I do have to say, for me, this place wasn't too difficult. I've already had a lot of experience with death claws, and the marked men are not too difficult, especially when using a anti-material rifle. Now, I do want to say, though, because of the heavy radiation levels, the irradiated enemies will heal due to the radiation. So the death claws and the marked men will heal if you don't kill them fast enough. And because of the high radiation levels, they can actually heal quite fast. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. And thank you all so much for all of the support and all of the interaction. It really means a lot. All of the comments, all of the likes, and all of the subscribers are greatly appreciated. And I do have a lot of fun making this series. So as always, if you have any recommendations for the next video, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time.
Now I am become death. The destroyer of worlds.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. The Army of Otters here, and today we're going to be checking out the Long 15. Now this video was requested several times by Wesley Gassett. So, Wesley, here you are. We have finally made it to this video. And just a huge shout out to everyone who enjoys this series and has subscribed to this channel. None of this would be possible without any of you, so thank you so much. Now, before I talk about the Long 15, I would like to go ahead and share what our good friend Ulysses has to say about it.
No damage done. Not yet. Maybe in years. Keeps the bear fenced. If Caesar can't drive it back, fire might. Only delays the end for the bull. A new wall for them to scale and cross. once they're done with the Mojave and Hoover Dam. Never again do you or any other courier and caravan need walk that route. Let the Mojave breathe without that asphalt scar raking it.
So Long 15 is only accessible if you choose to launch the nuclear weapons towards the New California Republic. If you're doing a good playthrough, or just kind of supportive of the NCR, or just a good person, you can easily miss this location. This location shares a lot of similarities with the Courier's Mile. However, this location is more oriented towards the NCR. And it's also worth noting that this location is much easier than the Courier's Mile. Now, before the events of the Great War, the Long 15 was just a long road between California and Nevada. And after the Great War, it became a very important route for the New California Republic, acting as a trade route between the NCR and New Vegas. But obviously, if you choose a certain course of action within the Lonesome Road DLC, it becomes a barren, lifeless wasteland. To access the Long 15, you must first complete the quest, The Apocalypse, then just head to the Mojave Outpost, and then you can just exit through the gate, as you can see me doing here. Now, once you enter the Long 15, the screen will go very bright, and then you will be awakened to the devastation that you, the player, have caused. It's a very haunting scene, and it's just a very dark and eerie reminder about the devastation of atomic weapons. Behind you, we can find the remnants of an outpost that was probably manned by many NCR soldiers before the Mojave outpost. And if we come over here, we can find the ruins of some kind of building. We are not able to determine what kind of building it is, but we can assume it had many souls within it. Now, on a more positive note, this building provides us with a really good sniper's nest for clearing out most of the ghoulified NCR troops in this area. Now, something unique with the Long 15 is we can actually find irradiated heavy troopers, and the game kind of implies that these are feral ghouls, which means we have feral ghouls in power armor, which is just a really terrifying thought. After clearing out the ghouls, we came over to this shooting range, where we can find a blast shadow, or a human shadow of death. Now, I talked about this in the last video, but in case you didn't catch that video, a blast shadow is a darkened outline or silhouette left on a surface after a nuclear explosion or extremely powerful blast. Basically what happens is the intense heat and radiation from the explosion vaporizes and bleaches the surface surrounding the objects, or in this case a person, but the areas shielded by that person remain less affected, creating this shadow-like imprint. And we can actually see this in real life in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I've actually been to the Hiroshima Peace Museum, and they have preserved some of these shadows to this day, so you can actually see them still. It's a very dark and very eerie reminder of the destruction and powerfulness of nuclear weapons. If you ever get the opportunity to visit Japan, I highly recommend to go visit it. It's very dark, it's very sad, but it gives you a big reflection on human history and humanity in general. Alright, and now on to some lighter topics. As in the Courier's Mile, there is a lot of ammunition here, so make sure you loot everything, as you can get some very rare ammunition in very large quantities, which is always going to be very good. Also, the Long 15 is significantly easier than the Courier's Mile because there are no death claws, and the ghouls here are pretty easy to kill once you're a high level, and assuming you've completed the Lonesome Road DLC, you're a high level. Now, we can also find Colonel Royez here, who can be pretty difficult to kill. He took a lot of shots from the anti-material rifle, but you definitely want to make sure to kill him, and you want to make sure to take his Scorched Sierra power armor, which is a unique power armor within Fallout New Vegas. So pretty cool and also very valuable. Near where I killed Colonel Royez, we can find a medical camp with a generous amount of medical supplies, So definitely make sure to hit it up, and you can get some automatic stim packs and some stim packs, along with doctor's bags and other useful chems. Now, I also wanted to point out that the vertibirds over here, this one has no noticeable markings on it. It just looks like a plain vertibird, which is interesting because we know there are NCR vertibirds. During the President Kimball assassination mission, we actually see the NCR vertibirds. Now, there's also some loot crates back here, kind of tucked in the corner of this valley, where the overturned truck is, so make sure to come back here and grab some of the loot. Now, there is a bunker, or barracks over here, barracks, but we cannot go inside, unfortunately, because it is blocked off. Also, there are plenty of weapon crates, so make sure to check them out. They kind of have random loot in them, so make sure to see what they have for you. Over here, we have a crashed Enclave vertibird, which is very interesting about why it would be here. Now, it might just be an oversight from developers, but I suspect maybe the NCR just captured it and repurposed it and never changed the emblems on it because it might be a waste of resources, but I don't know. And then over here, we have an overturned truck with all kinds of supplies and dead NCR troopers, specifically dead NCR rangers, around it. So as we can see here, just pure destruction from the nuclear explosion that happened not too long ago because of the actions of your character, the Courier. Now, of course, if you choose to not attack the NCR, none of this will be here. And over here in this back corner, we can find a ton of ammunition and some other weapon crates that potentially have weapon mods and other good weapons in them, so make sure to check it out. Also scattered around here, we can find ash piles, which are just pretty much vaporized people that we can find their remains. Obviously, there's nothing left because right over the side of this road here, we can see the crater from the nuclear explosion. If you attempt to go down here, you will be killed instantly. Your character just dies and the screen goes black. Now, this being the Unexplored Mojave, I wanted to see what was past this kill barrier. And actually on the edge of this crater, we can find a bunch of children's toys, including a toy car, a letter block, and a dinosaur, and a teddy bear. I wanted to try and reach it. However, it is protected by the kill barrier, so you would have to kind of finagle your way over there. And using the reload dash glitch, I was able to launch myself over to this building. And then, of course, once I was in this building, I saved. And this building is technically above the kill barrier, so you don't have to worry about dying once you're in here. However, trying to jump down towards the toys led to me being killed. So we would have to find another way to get the toys. So what I did was I hugged this wall over here, and I fell down on this ledge underneath the collapsed road. And then when I crouched, I was able to reach the toys, and I could pick them up. Now, this car is actually called Cuddle's Toy Car, which is somewhat interesting because this toy car is normally found at Black Mountain. Inside of Raoul's prison, there is Cuddle's Toy Car, and it only becomes Cuddle's Toy Car, though, once you read the terminal. I made a video about that in the past, and then we have a wooden block that just says take, but we cannot actually pick it up. And then here you can see me adding the toy car to my personal belongings, and I have 2 Cuddles toy cars. Once again, using the reload dash glitch, I was able to launch myself past the kill barrier and into the crater. But since I had a lot of height, I saved right before I hit the ground. And the reason for this is once you reload the save, your falling animation is reset so you don't take the fall damage that you were the first time, and you can survive the fall. And down here we can see the actual crater of the Long 15, which is pretty interesting. However, once you're down here, you're pretty much stuck. I couldn't finagle my way out of here at all, so there's not really much you can do down here besides kind of look around. Now, this crater was probably the site of ground zero for this atomic bomb, which is why the radiation is so high. So if you visit this area, of course you're going to need a lot of Radaway and a lot of Rad-X. That way you don't die from radiation poisoning. Alright guys, and there you have it, the Long 15. This video was long awaited by Wesley and I'm sure by many others. This is a very haunting place that serves as a reminder for the Courier's terrible actions. Of course, the Long 15 is only accessible if you initiate the apocalypse and use the nuclear weapons to target the NCR. Of course, I'm sure many players choose for the nuclear weapons to not target the NCR, which is the morally best choice. Overall, this location has some really good ammunition and medical supplies that are definitely worth looting. It is not nearly as difficult as the Courier's Mile, so it is a good place to check out and to stock up on supplies. That being said though, there is not a whole lot of interest here as far as unique or amazing items, and I do think the Courier's Mile is a lot better because it's more challenging and I think it's more aesthetically interesting. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time.
It is where we realize Wolpus did not approach us as equals, where we realized the wolf had come, and we watched our history die. Now it belongs to Legion, and all the death there now belongs to them as well. Not revenge, just a way of things when you own them.
War never changes.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Unexplored Mojave. The Army of Otters here, and today we're going to be checking out Dry Wells. This will be the last installment of the Unexplored Mojave for Lonesome Road. So don't worry, we will have plenty of more Unexplored Mojave, going back to the Mojave Wasteland, and of course the other DLCs. As I mentioned in the Long 15 video, this location was requested by Wesley Gassett many times, so thank you Wesley for all of your recommendations and all of your support. Now before you hear me talk about Dry Wells, let's see what our good friend Ulysses has to say.
No, opposite of that. It's where my tribe was taken, where another history was put to the blade, lesson taught. It is where we realize Wolpus did not approach us as equals, where we realized the wolf had come, and we watched our history die. Now it belongs to Legion, and all the death there now belongs to them as well. Not revenge, just a way of things when you own them.
So Dry Wells was Ulysses' birthplace, but obviously he has no sadness or regret over what happened because it became to be dominated by the Legion. Of course, Ulysses served in the Legion for a while until he eventually left. Now, Dry Wells is only accessible upon completing the Lonesome Road DLC and completing the Apocalypse, launching the nuclear weapons at Caesar's Legion. Of course, many players might actually choose this route as Caesar's Legion is quite evil. However, that it is also worth noting that since Caesar's Legion utilizes slavery, and most of these tribes that are conquered have no choice but to either fight or be killed, there's still many innocent lives being lost. So if you've completed the apocalypse, simply head to Cottonwood Cove, and now you can find the boat to Dry Wells right at the beachhead, and simply just click on the boat and it'll take you to Dry Wells. And upon the Courier's arrival at Dry Wells, we will be blinded by bright light, and we can see that the aesthetic here is similar to that of the Courier's Mile and Long 15. Kind of has this greenish tint, which is very reminiscent to all of Fallout 3. So clearly, this greenish tint is meant to signify kind of more destruction, whereas Fallout New Vegas kind of has that more western feel. So it's pretty cool seeing this aesthetic in Fallout New Vegas. Now, you will have to fight off a lot of irradiated Legion members, and some of them will actually be using stealth boys, which is pretty interesting. However, unfortunately, they don't have very good loot on them, so you just want to kind of take them out and kill them. Now, I found this area to be a bit more difficult than the Long 15, because I just thought there were more Legionaries than there were NCR troopers, and the Legionaries were regenerating their health. Also, these Legionaries kind of have the appearance of marked men or ghouls. I think they're kind of supposed to be more like ghouls, but they kind of have that marked man aesthetic. Now, a key feature here is we can see these burnt out tents that were clearly obliterated by the atomic explosion. And just like in the Courier's Mile and Long 15, there is a plethora of ammunition and medical supplies that we can get here. Now, when I fought Gaius Magnus, he was actually pretty difficult because he regenerates health, but I shot his gun out of his hand, so what ensued was a pretty funny battle. So Gaius Magnus was a Legion Centurion, but now he is dead, unfortunately for him. Kind of funny battle, and I got a really lucky shot with the anti-material rifle, which made this battle really easy. Now, since he's irradiated, the radiation will heal him, so pulling him back towards the water is a pretty good tactic because there's no radiation back there, therefore he cannot regenerate health. Moving up past that house where we were before the fight, we can find this cliff where there's a lot of ammunition and medical supplies, and we can also find the unique weapon, Red Victory Grenade Rifle. Now, Defika Adam 3332 actually mentioned I forgot to show the Great Bear Grenade Rifle, which is located in the Long 15 and kind of acts as the brother of the Red Victory. Now, the Great Bear Rifle is actually a US-issued grenade rifle, whereas the Red Victory is a Chinese grenade rifle. Of course, in the Fallout universe, the United States and China went to a war with each other, which resulted in the world we have now. Now, in the same crate as Red Victory, we can find a missing shipment note, which reads, General, we found a seized shipment of Chinese Red Victory model grenade launchers and thought you might like to have one for yourself. They're quicker to reload than our Great Bears, but they don't quite pack the same punch. Still, it'll be nice to give those bastards a taste of their own medicine if it comes to that, right? And this note also kindly demonstrates the difference between both rifles. The Chinese rifle reloads faster, but the American rifle does more damage. So once I had that, I continued exploring the devastation caused by the nuclear bomb. Now, there's lots of ammunition in this area, as in the past ones, but we can actually find a lot of mini nukes in this place. Also in the Courier's Mile and the Long 15, there are several mini nukes, which are really good, because in Fallout New Vegas, mini nukes are quite rare. But make sure to get all of the loot here, because it is really good. You have pretty rare ammo types in large quantities. Now, along this building, which is in the northeast part of Dry Wells, we can find pretty much nothing, but on the wall facing the crater, we can find a bomb shadow, otherwise known as a human shadow of death. Now, I've talked at length about these in the previous two videos, but if you haven't seen it, just a really quick summary. Basically, a blast shadow is a darkened outline of some kind of object. Basically, that object is probably destroyed. In this case, it's a person. Because of the intense heat and radiation from the explosion, it bleaches the surface surrounding the object, but the object acts as a barrier, creating this dark shadow. Now, here it's opposite. Actually, the person should be black and everything else should be white. Don't know why the devs did it, rather to make it more humorous and less dark, or just a oversight. Now, I did manage to pull an actual photo of the human shadow of death from the Hiroshima Peace Museum's website. Now, this shadow is still visible today if you visit the museum, so go check it out if you ever visit Japan. It's a very dark and eerie reminder of what humans are capable of. Now, over here we can see the crater from the explosion of the nuclear bomb. However, we cannot go inside of it, and I really tried to get to the bottom of it, but it was far more difficult than the long 15. Now, the kill barrier seems to be more of a straight line up and down, rather than like a floor on the long 15. So I tried to do like reload dashing into the crater like I did in the long 15, but it just flung me backwards and killed me. I tried it from different angles and I couldn't get through it, so I was kind of disheartened. But I did manage to get out of the map. So I was trying to leave the map by reload dashing, but I was struggling a lot, and eventually I got really lucky, and I don't know how to replicate this. I tried to do it again, but I couldn't do it. So I looked up and I reload dash, and for some reason it launched me through the map. And from here we can see the hollowed out buildings above us that sit on the cliff. Now these buildings are really eerie in my opinion, and they just look very ghostly and scary. Really good for that October Halloween aesthetic though. Then using the reload dash more, we can quickly travel around the outer part of the map, and we can go over to this building, and I actually expected it to kind of have no hit barrier, but it actually does. You cannot enter the building, which is kind of interesting. Now I tried to get on top of the building using reload dash for about 15 minutes, but I couldn't manage to get up there, so if you want, you could try at it. If you can manage to get out of the map, let me know if you succeed if you want to try. And like I said before, I did try to get to the bottom of the crater. I spent maybe 30 minutes just trying different things. And at one point, I almost kind of succeeded. I used a reload dash here, and it launched me through the texture, but the kill barrier killed me. So very unfortunate. I kept trying to kind of replicate it or going at it from a different angle, but I failed every time, hitting this invisible barrier. So, a little bit disappointing, but, not the end of the world. And then over here, we can actually see the end of the river. So, obviously, the game does not have a river all the way back to the Mojave Wasteland. Alright, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Mojave. I had a lot of fun making these past 3 videos, the Courier's Mile, the Long 15, and Dry Wells. Now, if you have any recommendations for the future, please leave them in the comments section below. I pretty much plan to kind of go back to the more original Unexplored Mojave series, but perhaps I'll try and add some more artistic flares to them in the future, kind of like I did with these videos. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate all of your guys' comments and feedback and all of your support. I couldn't do any of this without you, and I've been having so much fun making these videos. Now, one more thing before we end this video, we'll have a little bit of an epilogue as we can listen to Ulysses' final message.
Last tape, last message. In case you best me. If you're hearing this, you have, through blood or word. This message and all that lies with it. It is for you, Courier. If you want to know the why of things. This world, I've walked a good part of it. I stopped only because of you. What you did gave me pause. Long ago, I crossed the Colorado, the first among the Legion to see Hoover Dam in all its glory. An old world wall, yet bridging 2 sides. And beyond it, a symbol of a 2-headed bear. An idea great enough to challenge Devourer himself. Might kill him taking it, whether he won or lost. The bull needs to fight, needs the challenge. Without it, it falters, dies in the dust. Might be a lesson there, in you and me. Leave the thought behind the message to you. My message is this. The destruction that has been wrought at the Divide, or elsewhere, if you couldn't stop me, it can happen again. It will keep happening. If war doesn't change, men must change, and so must their symbols. Even if it is nothing at all, know what you follow, Courier. Just as I followed you to the end. Whatever your symbol, carry it on your back and wear it proudly when you stand at Hoover Dam.